Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So you look at the book of Exodus, chapter 21, verse 14. The Torah talks about one who kills intentionally, with intent. The Torah says, if somebody schemes against another to kill him, me'im mizbechi tikachenu lamut. You should take him even from my altar to die. In literal sense, it means that even though the altar, which is the holiest place in the world, it has the status of, quote, a city of refuge, as we'll talk about later on in the Torah, the cities of refuge provided refuge, or at least temporary refuge, even for somebody who killed intentionally, until such time that he can stand trial and get the proper justice. So says God, that even though the altar indeed had that status, and technically, if he's holding on to the altar, you would think perhaps he should be at least safe. He's like on base, so to speak, and you can't touch him, at least for the time that he's holding on to the altar. Says God, no. Since he killed intentionally, this was done with a scheme to take another human life, then even if he's holding on to this holy place, you need to take him and he has to stand trial. And as it says literally here, tikachenu lamut, you should take him to die. Because according to the Torah, when you take one's life, technically speaking, your life should be taken. And the reason why I say technically speaking, because sometimes the circumstances are there's not enough evidence, or if there's not enough proof of intent and so on, or there can be some kind of technical problem with, let's say, the witnesses or so, with the testimony. But the fact is that in essence, when you take a human life, your life now should be taken. Now, I want to give a little deeper insight because the Torah uses here a very interesting metaphor taken from my altar. What happens on the altar, on God's altar? There are sacrifices. How many times do we hear about a sacrificed childhood? We hear about a terrible upbringing, about disastrous circumstances that perhaps, or not only perhaps, but indeed impacted the individual's life, the murderer's life. And many times people try to use it in the court of law in order to somewhat minimize their actions, in order to somewhat, I guess, make less of the severity of what they've done, of what they did. And the Torah is telling us, even from my altar, which in a sense it is God's altar, we don't understand, we don't know the reason why God chooses one child to be born into a pretty nice and just comfortable, intact, nurturing family, while another child in the same time, and perhaps almost in the same place, in a close proximity, grows up in a very tumultuous home with all the turmoil and all the abuse and everything else. We don't understand. That's almost like a sacrifice of God. We don't understand it. So it's almost like being taken from God's altar. But that still does not justify, does not make right when that child grows up and perpetrates atrocities, crimes, like taking another person's life. It gives us some understanding of why this person is in turmoil. It gives us some understanding why this person perhaps lacks compassion. But it is no justification and no excuse at all, says God, for one to commit such a crime. And that's something which we need to do. You cannot exonerate someone exclusively based on the dynamics of which he grew up in. Could it contribute to our compassion on this person? Absolutely, yes. But it cannot take away from what the person did. That's perhaps what the message, the deeper message the Torah is telling us here.